Have you ever seen eyes on the back of a dog's head, or a person's mouth falling off their face? If so, you probably wouldn't tell anyone, fearing they may think you've gone crazy. However, Brad Duchesne says that despite popular beliefs, these types of hallucinations are not a sign of mental illness.
A lot of the people we hear from, their first thought is, this is a sign I'm going crazy, and I'm not going to tell people about this. There was one person that we heard from, I actually still haven't spoken with him, but I spoke with his partner, and they'd been together for 20 years, and she had only just realized that he was having daily face distortions because he didn't want to share that with her because he was afraid of what she might think if he told her that.
Duchesne is a professor in psychological and brain sciences at Dartmouth College. His research center attracts many people who are worried that they've gone off the deep end, but Duchesne assures them they're not psychotic. In fact, the hallucinations aren't a product of neurosis, but rather an issue with their sight. Prosopometamorphopsia, or PMO, is a rare condition that affects the visual cortex of the brain.
It's a condition in which people have distortions that affect their face perception. So they might see faces that change in shape or color or texture, features might move around, and often they see active change as they look at a face. So the mouth might droop as they're looking at the face.
The effects of PMO vary from person to person. Some people see distorted faces, while others may even get hallucinations from time to time.
There are some people who see very consistent distortions on every face they encounter. So, if they were to see the same person, they're going to see a similar distortion in that person's face. But on those cases that have a wide variety of distortions, we haven't seen consistent distortions for particular identities.
PMO can often be mistaken for prosopagnosia, also known as face blindness, which is a different disorder that affects maybe 1% to 2% of the population. That's a condition where people can't recognize faces, and in severe cases, not even their loved ones. Radio Health Journal has reported on face blindness in the past, but Duchesne thinks PMO is even more rare. Researchers don't know for sure how long it's been around, but Duchesne suspects that's because people have been afraid to tell anyone about their experiences. The first report was documented in 1904. Since then, only 80 to 100 known cases have been recorded.
Francis Bacon, who some people think is one of the most important artists of the 20th century, he painted lots and lots of distorted faces. And there are interviews with him where he talks about, he's like, I'm just trying to paint what I see. So in fact, there was an article in Frontiers in Neuroscience or Neurology that speculated that Bacon had PMO. But we're realizing that there are a lot of people out there who see distortions when they look at faces. And that's because there's been media attention about some of the work that we've done. And as a result of that, we're approaching 200 people over the last few years. I suspect we're still talking in the US. I mean, if we've heard from 100 Americans, there must be tens of thousands of people with face distortions.
Researchers don't understand exactly what causes PMO, but they think it may be due to a disruption in the visual cortex part of the brain.
The back of your brain is dedicated to processing visual information. And within that part of the brain dedicated to processing visual information, there are what we call face selective areas. Little, say, blueberry-sized clusters of neurons that are specialized for processing faces. And these areas are connected up with one another. And we don't have a good understanding about what causes PMO, but we see sometimes, say, when the connections between two different face areas are disrupted, that connection problem can cause PMO. Presumably, sometimes damage to particular areas can cause PMO, but I'm less confident about that. That might be more likely to result in prosopagnosia.
Duchesne says that PMO can sometimes be brought on by a neurological event, but in most cases, patients can't pinpoint a specific incident, such as a concussion or stroke, that would have led to its onset.
Something went wrong, obviously, but it's not clear to most of the people who we hear from what that might be. They might say, well, I did have a concussion 6 months before the distortion started, so that might be it, but it's, you just don't know.
Others with PMO have had the condition all their lives, and the distortions never change. For example, all faces may appear to be stretched backwards, like when you place your palms on both cheeks and temples and pull the skin back. These are called stable distortions. To these people, that's just how all faces look. They have no idea it's not what everyone else is seeing. Duchesne and his team will publish a paper in the coming months about a teenage boy nicknamed VS who has had PMO all his life.
VS's distortions are stable. He looks at a face, it just looks stretched back. There's no change as he looks at it. So you can imagine that there are probably people who have developmental prosopometamorphopsia and have stable distortions, and they just think that's how faces look. He deals with it very well. He's really mature for his age and just kind of rolls with it. But, it has to be extremely challenging. And one sort of interesting point to make, too, about the developmental variant. The great majority of the people we hear from, they had normal face perception, and then one day they started seeing distorted faces. But we've heard from a small number of people who appear to have had it their entire lives, like this boy I mentioned, and a few others. And in a number of these individuals, we see the distortions run in their families.
Researchers hope that by studying PMO, they'll better understand the typical human brain and be able to reduce the distortions these people have.
One thing that we found that helps some people, not all, but some, is if they look through color filters, the distortions are reduced. Others, and those same people, I should say, if they look through a different color filter, they're amplified. So two of the people we work with, if they look through a green filter, their distortions are weaker. If they look through a red filter, their distortions are boosted. And then there's another person who shows the opposite pattern. And then some people are not affected by color. So we had a person visit from Texas a few weeks ago, and she just has no color effects.
Duchesne likens PMO face distortions to drug-induced hallucinations. In fact, he hopes to someday be able to compare the brain activity of someone who has PMO to someone hallucinating on psilocybin.
We'd like to do even just simple perceptual studies, because there are a lot of studies involving hallucinogens right now for clinical purposes. And while the people are just sitting around in the midst of the study, we wondered if we could show them some faces. We haven't had that opportunity yet, but we've talked to one guy who's involved in those sorts of studies. So it's something we'd like to pursue.
Duchesne would love to hear from more people who may have prosopometamorphopsia. If you think you have PMO or would like more information about the disorder, you can contact him by visiting our website at radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our writer-producer this week is Polly Hansen. Our lead producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Greg Johnson.